I know of no more encouraging fact than the unquestionable ability of the human to elevate their lives by a conscious endeavor. It is something to be able to paint a particular picture or to carve a statue, and so to make a few objects beautiful. But it is far more glorious to carve and paint the very atmosphere and medium through which we look, which morally we can do. To affect the quality of the day, that is the highest of arts. Henry David Thoreau.
Welcome to everyone to Still and Moving Center's Gems from the Wisdom Traditions, in which today we are going to take up the idea of being truly human, which is our theme for the year, of standing upright. Isn't that an appropriate topic for this year? Standing upright. So I think as we're looking into this topic, we'll find out something about standing upright, not just from the physical standpoint, but how that affects the quality of our days, of our lives, to be beings who stand upright in the world. And today, to give us our starting presentation, we're very fortunate to have with us Marla Waal. Marla Waal has been a teacher of Eldoa, a somatic movement technique, just about since the beginning of when we went online, and we're just so thrilled to have her part of the Still and Moving Center faculty. So in addition to being very knowledgeable on that particular movement technique, Eldoa, she's also a trained yogini who gives yoga classes. She gives a class called Breath Oasis, which takes from the Buteyko breathing technique. And she is a past professional dancer. And we know of Marla through Nilanthi Vadivel, our operations manager, with whom she went to ballet school. So they go back a long, long time. And I feel like part of that legacy of knowing one another is in my heart with Marla. I'm so pleased to have you join us today, Marla. And take it away.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Renee. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I feel, through Neela and just through my experiences with you, I feel really fortunate to be part of the Still and Moving Center family. And I'm happy to contribute my piece that I can share about this really amazing topic that we had a lovely conversation yesterday, Renee, and of course it just kind of continued to percolate. So this idea of us being upright as humans, and I kind of went a little deeper with it too, in terms of, well, why, and just what is our physical experience. I come to the world really, I think I live very an experience. I'm very aware of my physical sensations, and I feel I experience emotion and everything through the physical. That's kind of how I meet the world. And I'm not the only one, I realize that. So just to share that piece, I'm often helping people to regain their posture or their structure after a period of, for some reason, losing it. And so I've thought about this very, very deeply. So I'd love for us to, just as an exploration, let's go back, a few thousand years, 100,000 years. I'm not an expert on evolution, but let's just imagine, and different beliefs, of course, exist, but let's just imagine for a moment that we are on all fours, or even just let yourself collapse for a moment. How would that feel? If we're the only mammals who live our lives in this way, meeting the earth in this way, walking the way we do. So I feel like it would be wonderful to begin our exploration with this idea of how would it feel to be closer to the ground? So I'm not sure everyone has the space. If you don't really feel you want to move out from your chair, you don't have to. You can simply collapse, maybe put your hands on your knees. But if you have the space, maybe, and you feel like you want to explore, try just coming on all fours. Hopefully you have a carpeted area. And just try experiencing how does that feel to move around the space, and think of being like almost like a lion for a moment. Just you're kind of crawling from your shoulders, and you don't have to move very far. But so in this position, notice that your heart is facing the earth, your eyes want to face the earth, and you're connecting through hands and knees right now. But if you were a quadruped animal, it would be through your hands and feet. And so just kind of explore what is in your field of vision, what is in your field of connection in a position like this. And experiment with moving forward, moving backward. What if you heard a sound? You would have to look, where is that sound coming from? You would be using your body to sense different things in your environment. And if you would like to, even shift into like a child's pose from here. So just shifting down onto hands and maybe onto your elbows. And just kind of experiencing how would it feel to be a mammal closer to the earth, with your heart facing the earth, your face shining towards the earth. Listening to your breath, feeling your breath. And this might be, let's access our imaginations for a moment and do our own film fast forward montage of evolution, and just gradually grow out from this place, kind of like a seed growing in the sunlight. And you're starting to lift your heart, you're starting to move towards upright. And as you're doing that, just maybe noticing, how does your perspective change? As you maybe come into a seated position, or it's up to you if you maybe come up onto your knees, as you're able to shine your heart out, as you're able to have your focus to the horizon. So it's up to you if you want to be on your knees or if you prefer to be up on your feet. But now just maybe getting a sense of your physical experience in this plane, where your view is very different now. Your heart is shining outward. How do you feel as you're relating to your environment? Good. And then if you'd like to, you could come up onto your feet. Or if you prefer to come into your chair and just have that experience, maybe tuning into your emotions. How does that feel emotionally? It might feel quite different. Notice your breathing. Beautiful. So I think it's we're so fortunate to have these bodies that we get to explore space. We get to explore movement, we get to explore space. And so I would invite you to explore that at any time. I was fortunate once to be in a class with Eric Franklin where he did this, it was about 30 minutes where we did an evolution of, we started laying on the ground, and then he talked us through from being like a little amoeba in the ocean to growing into this whole other being, to coming out of the water, to developing different perceptions. It's quite, and in a way we have that journey. If we start from a few cells, we expand, we expand, we expand. So here we are, these beings that are upright with this great big brain in our head that is floating at the highest point, with these beautiful hearts that get to shine out, with our eyes that get to peer at the horizon and look around in our environment. So this ability for us to live and meet the world in an upright position is really quite a gift, because we also have the ability to come on all fours and move our bodies in all of these amazing different ranges of motion. So now the way I teach with Eldoa practice, we talk a lot about the gravity line. So as you're seated now, finding the gravity line for your pelvis, ribs, head, this is a position where we're at low tension. Our bodies are at low tension when we're in that alignment. So as we sit in that tall alignment, imagining a laser going through your head, through your body, and your body just naturally aligns around this. It's not a static position. This alignment is a movement. Much like if you had a string of pearls and you're just holding the string and you could easily move the string. The relationship of each pearl is still the same. The string has a fluidity to it. It's not a stuck position. So when we're in our gravity line, we're available for movement. We have a certain freedom and range of motion. Now, just noticing when we're in this nicely stacked alignment, noticing your breath in through your nose, your access to your diaphragm, your access to your lungs. Take a few soft breaths in through your nose, out through your nose, and just notice, okay, yeah. My lungs have space, my heart has space. My field of vision is open. And now, just to take us on another little journey, let's imagine we've been sitting, maybe we had an academic life. Perhaps we studied at a desk and got our PhD, or we we work at an office. Our pursuits have kept us, for some reason, seated in a chair, on our computer, or writing or reading. Give yourself a moment to succumb a little bit, to give in to the forces of gravity and the weight of your body. Let yourself collapse a little bit, just to see how that feels. Where we lose our gravity line, our heart begins to pull back a little bit into our chest. It's almost like our heart retreats back into a little cave. Our shoulders will tend to round a little bit forward. Your head usually starts to poke forward a little bit. Now, as you even exaggerate this a little bit, maybe you've seen images, or you have someone in your family that you've noticed has come into quite a position that's extreme, just for a moment to try it on like an actor. How does that feel? What kind of emotions do you feel in this position? There's like an embodiment or a feeling. Notice what's happening with your breath. We're not going to stay here too long. As your breath comes in through your nose, out through your nose, what parts of your body can you move as you breathe? I'd like for you to name some of these emotions that you feel. And you can name them for yourself. If you feel like coming off mute, you can share. Catherine, you look like you have an emotion that you could share.
Well, I really don't care. No, it's kind of sad.
Sad.
What's it all about, Alfie?
Yeah. And I feel as I'm in this position, I almost feel a bit invisible. Like, don't look at me. Now, let's start to grow out of this. Let's come back. Let's allow our heart to come out of its cave. Start to slowly reestablish your gravity line. Give your body some nice little wiggles. There we go. Train is done. Let your heart float forward a little bit into the sunshine. Your lungs have space. Your head is now floating in its position, your ribs. Check in with your breathing. Is it a bit easier, a bit more natural, effortless, available? So in this position, I almost feel like I can smell or sip the nectar of life. I feel there's more vitality. Yes, able to receive more sensory details. Yes, exactly. So we have our ability to sense. I mean, typically we have 6 senses, but I think we probably have a few more. But our sensory abilities are available to us. Our smell, our eyes, we can see what's around us, our heart, our body. We can sense where we are in space. We can sense the world around us. Now, over time, our bodies can take on these positions unintentionally, and they can feel a little bit stuck there. And so we have a lot of different practices to bring this vitality back for us. And one of the images that comes to mind, and with Renee's beautiful images that she shared with us of tensegrity, of our body's alignment, the movement practices that we do that bring us joy tend to be the types of practices that bring us into this playful upright position. And within that ability to feel our bodies, we move through lots of different positions. We don't necessarily stay in our upright, but all of this movement that we do makes the upright position feel really free and natural, like our home position. And from that home position, we have this ability to explore and play from lots of different perspectives. So I just thought I'd share with you, we're going to come to standing now. I thought I'd share with you a little bit of that perspective of how do we bring in these fascial lines? How do we create a feeling of tensegrity to maybe refresh that in our bodies? Because we know we feel more vitality, we feel more ready for play, more ready for joy when we can be in our upright position. And I think there's a lot of philosophy that we can dig into about that and our potential as humans within that. And in order to stay available for that potential and to stay open for that, creativity, and I would say even spirituality that is available to us, keeping our bodies open is a really big piece of that. So I thought I'd share with you some of the practices that I do with my students and in the classes that I teach to help maintain these opposing forces. So Donna Farhi is a wonderful yoga teacher, and she's written some great books. They're quite scientific. And one of the things that I love that she says is the 2 extremes within our posture are, number 1, collapsing, which we just did. We can call it collapsing, sinking or collapsing into gravity. If we do the opposite of that, it's called propping, or she calls it propping, where we prop ourselves up and we like kind of a militaristic posture. Both of those have their disadvantages. What we'd like to do, her terminology is yielding, where we're in this place somewhere in the middle where we actually have an experience of the downward forces and the upward forces are playing together at the same time. So we're not trying to eliminate them, we're playing with those energies. So I'm going to come to standing. If you're able to, where you are, if you could come to standing position. And you can just kind of shake out your hands, shake out your body a little bit. So the fascial lines in our body connect in all ways, really. And to help us wake up those connections through our feet, through our hands, through the top of our head, I like to stand in a nice wide position here. We're going to connect down into our right foot and up into our left hand. So as I push down into my right foot, I'm going to push through my left hand. We're creating a specific line of tension. You could imagine you're stretching all of the fascia from your hand through your body through to your foot. So pushing in the outer corners of your big square. If you drew a big square around yourself, create that nice stretch from one foot to the opposite hand, like half of an X. Press even more, and relax. Let's do the other side. So we'll push down into the left foot, out into the right hand. So pushing through the foot, pushing through the opposite hand, create the other half of your X, create that line of tension, press, even up through your head, down through your tailbone, and relax. Give everything a little wiggle. You can shake out your legs. Now we're going to do the full X. Let's do one side first. So push into the right foot, left hand, find one half of your X. Now left foot and right hand, find the other half of your X. Can you hold those two lines of tension at the same time? Let's add one more line. Pull down through your tailbone and push the top of your head up to the sky. 2 more breaths, pressing out into those 4 corners, and slowly relax. Shake out your hands, shake out your legs. And now that we've woken up those very specific lines of tension, take a little walk and see if you can feel nice and free and light in your body. Nice. So we just did a quick little taste of the feeling of traction that we can create in our body to help reawaken those opposing forces. Generally, we live in a space where compression seems to take over due to gravity, due to sitting for long periods of time. And so a lot of the practices I teach are about waking up those opposing forces, creating more space in your body, and almost a feeling of traction to help strengthen your ability to lengthen out of gravity. There's another model I'd like to share for this if I have a moment. Renee, do I have another 2 minutes? Yes, 2 minutes. Okay. So this way of using, we're talking about the two forces. We're so fortunate we're in this upright position where we get to play with the force of gravity, and at the same time, this upward force that we have. That one is a little more abstract to explain, right? I think we can understand the apple falls from the tree and it drops to the ground. But how do we get that upward force? And we have this fascial system that creates a feeling of suspension in our organs. Now imagine if we didn't have that fascial system and our organs just kind of dropped into gravity. All your organs would pool around by your feet or in the bottom of your pelvis. But we have this amazing suspension system within our bodies that supports our organs. So that, like this example of what we just did, the X is a way to just invigorate that suspension system. I just want to invite one more image for you, and that is of a bouncing ball. So when we walk, when we move, we're meant to use gravity as an opposing force and as a source of energy. The same way when a ball bounces, it comes back up. You don't have to hold the ball, put it to the ground, and then pick it up. You simply tap it and it bounces back up. There's this rebound action. We are designed to do the same thing when we walk. We drop into gravity, we rebound, we drop, we rebound, we drop, we rebound. But when we lose this tensegrity feeling of being of those opposing forces, then we're picking up one leg at a time. We pick it up, we pick it up, we pick it up. Whereas we should be just like a bouncing ball. We step, we rebound, we step, we rebound. So this is a nice image to play with when you go for a walk. You just swing your leg and you fall, you rebound. You swing, you fall, you rebound. Can you be like a bouncing ball? It's easier to see in our children or our grandchildren when they're jumping rope, but we can start to embody this as well. We can bring it back. I'm very passionate about this. So if you have any questions or anything, Renee, I should pass the baton to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was just really glorious. Well, since I have the ability, I think what I'd like to do is just to kind of augment people's understanding of this word you're using about tensegrity. There's a leading body worker in today's world named Tom Myers, who has used tensegrity to help understand this whole myofascial system that you also referenced. And it helps us to understand, I think, if we go a little further, how it is that we as human beings can stand upright. When you think about it, it's kind of remarkable that we have basically such a tiny little base with these 2 small feet from which we rise 5, 6, even farther higher into the ground. I mean, think how tiny the base of our feet is vis-a-vis how tall we stand. We're kind of an engineering marvel. And evidently, tensegrity helps us to understand this upright position. So I'm just going to play for us for a minute, if we can, 2 minutes of Tom Myers sharing with us what tensegrity actually is, just in case it helps our conversation today.
So this is a tensegrity structure. It was my great good fortune to work and study with Buckminster Fuller early in my life before I became a body worker. And he was the fellow who developed the geometry. Kenneth Snelson, the artist, first started making these kinds of structures. What I'd like you to notice about these is that the dowels, the bones of this structure, if you will, are floating in space, and they are held in space by the balance of the elastics, the muscles and the fascia, the myofascia, if we were doing an analogy to the body. So these structures, we're not used to looking at structures like this. This is similar to a balloon, maybe. But otherwise, we're used to structures that are continuous compression, like houses. So we structured our body as if it were a continuous compression structure too. We think the head sits on the neck and the head and the neck sit on the torso, and that it's like a stack of bricks all the way down to the ground. But in fact, the bones, well, at least we could consider it this way, the bones float inside the soft tissue. And when you start seeing the body this way, you see a lot of things. You see how the problem in the hip can really be founded in the arch, that the problem in this side of the neck is down at the bottom of the rib cage on the other side, because you start seeing how the interrelationships of things start working in the body. So Ida Rolf used to say, where you think it is, it ain't. And this tensegrity gives you a model where you can see, oh, if this pulls over here because the whole structure gives into it, the pain might be over here somewhere. And we're looking for ways of modeling this that would be predictive, so that we could say, okay, if you have this kind of problem, then we should look in specific places to help sort that. But this kind of model for the body really has a whole new way of thinking about ourselves that is not the usual muscles on the bones kind of model.
So let's hear some ideas and questions from all of you, from your life wisdom as upright beings, as far as I know, and I think I do know all of you. Yes, all of you have the experience of walking, standing upright. And what do you think that has to do with being truly human? And any other questions and comments you might have to make? Elizabeth is here, and Elizabeth is an evolutionary biologist. We're very privileged to have with us today.
Hi, Renee and everybody. I don't often have a Saturday afternoon free, but I do like this tensegrity concept and have for a long time. There was a Scientific American article, I think it was a cover article way back in early 90s, I believe, on tensegrity in cells. And that fascinated me as an evolution biologist. Because it had this wonderful description of how the cell's first ability to move around, if it wasn't, just being floated in a liquid environment, was through tensegrity, and how the cell could lift itself up suddenly and get places. And then, of course, I'm also fascinated by the relationship between plants and animals. And I sometimes think animals are plants that lost their chloroplasts so that they couldn't make food in place. And they had to develop all these things like muscle, bone, tensegrity systems to get around, and perception systems to detect their food, and the claws and stuff to catch it, and the digestive system to process it. So yeah, I'm fascinated by tensegrity, and being 86, I have got some serious tensegrity challenges. And Maria, I love your exercise. And I'm going to do that one. I like it a lot. And I had 2 hip replacements, and this been all that getting to walk again, and I'm still working on it. But anyway, thank you for being aware of and using tensegrity to help us to understand our own tensegrity and how we can use it to improve ourselves.
Wonderful. My pleasure.
Carolyn.
I think the most notable thing about our organization is that when we're standing, we can see much further away. I mean, imagine if our eyes were 6-8 inches from the ground. How much could we see? So I think that, and that combine that with able to turn around, particularly when we hear something, say somebody's calling, somebody's doing whatever. I think it's not only do we have some very distinctive capacities, but they're also integrated. So we hear something, we can turn around, we can look a long distance, or maybe it's not such a long distance. So I just think that there's it's kind of like we have multiple faculties that are all kind of stuck into the same physical form. That's all I wanted to say. And therefore have a lot of different ways in which we can experience the world.
Robert.
Well, I was struck that that Tai Chi must treat the body in a similar sort of fashion. You know, it doesn't treat it like bricks or things stacked up on each other, but actually as, you know, very, very fluid, and also space actually interpenetrating us, you know, not just outside space, inside space, but they interpenetrate and flow. So it just made me look at Tai Chi in a new way. I wonder if you thought anything about that.
Marla?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think I'm not a seasoned Tai Chi person, but I've done quite a bit of Qigong and a little bit of Tai Chi. And absolutely, I think they're playing with those opposing forces so beautifully. You know, feeling the connection through the feet, through the ground, and then letting the energy flow up through you, honoring, I think, and I don't want to, like I say, I'm not a Tai Chi master or person who's really studied it deeply, but the little bit I've done, I absolutely feel it's very much about those opposing forces and playing with them, dancing within them, and having that harmony that gives you the solid connection to the earth, yet that freedom to flow up from it. And when things get out of balance, we get out of balance. So we're playing with finding the balance and coming back to the balance. Maybe we go away from it and we come back to it. We go away from it and we come back to it. But that we know where that place of balance is, and that we get to play in those energies. And I think it's in the case of Qigong and Tai Chi, I think it's very healing. Well, movement is healing, I think, in general, but those practices are very specifically re-establishing those healing energies in a very specific way. Each of these practices are specific. So, I mean, I can't really favor one over another. I'm a fan of most of them. So.
See, you belong in Still and Moving Centers family.
Yeah, I mean, I really love, I mean, and I think we're so fortunate to be in a time where we get to have a buffet in a sense. And there's different times in our lives where one type of practice might feel more suited to us at that time. But there's a potential in each of these practices for this, I think.
Yes.
Obviously, Renee would agree, I think.
Yes, absolutely. David.
Hello, everyone. First, I have an observation and a reflection, and then I have a question. It's just curious, the cover article for this month's Massage and Bodywork is all about fascia. And they finally created a complete structure, the human body in all of its fascia. So fascinating that in this, speaking of evolution, that the evolution of consciousness, our awareness about fascia is pretty new. And similarly, our awareness of the kingdom of fungus which has a lot of similarities to fascia in terms of connectivity. And so I'm thinking from a grander scale of life itself, that the fungal kingdom might be sort of the equivalent of the fascia in our body's network, which is also riddled with fungus, by the way, as a separate topic. But the question then was about, we're 75 to 80% water, and I believe fascia is primarily water. And I'm thinking that we're talking about these ways of moving through tensegrity that sound a lot like fluid dynamics. So I'm curious about the relationship between tensegrity maybe as a structure that emulates water's ability to flow. I'm just spitting here, so help me out.
That's fascinating. I would agree with you. I think there's something really fascinating about that. I mean, our bodies are mostly water, yet our water in our bodies does not pool around our feet, does it? There's a distribution, there is a suspension process that allows this homeostasis of our fluid bodies to distribute throughout our system. Even in an upright position, it doesn't pool at our feet. I mean, I think that's another miracle. So I think there's a real mystery to our system for me, because I'm not an in-depth scientist. I'm sure someone could give a lecture that would really explain this very particularly. But through my movement practices and through my movement study, there's an innate understanding or wisdom, I think, that we come to through becoming really close and intimate with our moving and fluid body, that we can play with moving that fluid in a way, but yet there's this homeostasis place. And I think the suspension of the fascial system, our skeletal system, the organ system, and all of it suspended in fascia, much like his tensegrity model, where we are these fluids, these bones floating in a fluid model. I think what you're saying is beautiful. I think it fits completely. I can't explain it completely, but it makes a lot of sense to me. It makes intuitive sense.
I wonder if Elizabeth would like to just join in here. Do you have any more explanation you'd like to give us?
No, I'm just thinking about how the model is fun to see the bones floating. It seems like a very strange idea to us, but then it was a strange idea to us when physicists told us that there really wasn't anything solid in our world, that it was all made of energy, right? So we're just getting used to thinking this. And anyway, I like David's question about the relationship between the flow and water, and because that was very much on my mind, Renee, when you asked me to say something, but I can't really say much of it, except that I think it's a great question and that it's a sensible question. How is it that water molecules pass each other by and create waves and things like that, right? And there are obviously waves going on in our bodies constantly. I think there is a relationship, David, and it's a lovely one to explore.
So I have to speak up about Sue Hitzman, who invented melt. So melt is all based on what you were talking about, David, that fluid flow in our body. I just went through the next level of training in it, and we're in a situation where we're analyzing somebody's stance. They were having habitual problems in their neck, etc. And all the, hands-on body workers and everybody was like, wow, this could release and this point could release. And Sue Hitzman said, have you had a surgery lately? And the person said, yes. What's that got to do with it? It was 8 months ago. And I'm fine. She says, was it appendix? And he said, yes. And she said, it's the scar tissue around the appendix that is pulling on the fascia, and here's where you're feeling it. So again, you know what Ida Roth said about where you think the problem is, it isn't, you know, because of that, the matrix of the fascia. So I find that really fascinating. And I think, David, you were illuminating, or you were referring to Body World's plastination, which has just done a body fascia. They just revealed it, I guess it was last spring. And they had so many decisions. It took them months and months. And the fascia research scientists were like, oh gosh, should we just show this layer of fascia, or should we peel back and see this layer of fascia? So they made all those kind of decisions. But the fascinating thing to me that blew my mind was you could see that, like we were standing in the X, you can see the fascia lines as little grooves through the fascia. So this isn't woo-woo, you know, part of me when I always thought, okay, these lines are kind of like energetic lines, but you could actually see the groove in the fascia. So anyway, it's all fascinating. And yeah, it's, you know, Sue Hitzman has been on the fascia research team since its inception. And I mean, this is all very fascinating. Not how I learned anatomy and physiology, you know, bones and muscles and all of that. But it really, and it also throws a question into what is our plumb line? What is our true plumb line? Because it can be a different thing for different people. So symmetry is overrated. Sometimes the body organizes in different ways.
Yeah, I love what you just shared. And the gravity line or plumb line is absolutely going to be different for different people. What I think of when I think of the gravity line is I think of those artists who stack the rocks at the beach. And these rocks are all different shaped, and they're just looking for that gravity line, and somehow they magically stack these rocks. So just as each body is unique, we can't go up to people's bodies and be saying, oh, this curve should look like this, your head should be here, this should be there. It's looking for that place of low tension. It's that place of low tension, and it's going to be different for each body. And speaking to those fascial lines that are very real, some of you have done Eldoa practice with me. The names of the postures are very specific to the spaces between each joint in your body. So specifically the spine, the name of the posture might be T67, for example. So we're actually specifically using the fascia to open up an extra space to spread out that space between T6 and T7 in your thoracic spine. So as I've studied this a lot, and I've gone quite far into the training, and as teachers, we practice on each other's bodies. So we would palpate on the body to find T67, and in that specific pose, there should be more of a space. It should be flattened out and more spacious. So we're trying to do it. Exactly. Yeah. And then we would be like, well, where did it go? I'm not feeling it. Sure enough, the tension was gone from the hands or the feet. And as soon as we get them to engage the tension more through the center of the palm, they had lost it because we kept them there for so long, because we're students, right? We're teachers trying to figure this out. They're like, oh, you lost your hands. As soon as they add the hands or the feet, there it is. So how is that possible that when you spread open your hands and you do the rest of the posture, we get what we're going for? It's just incredible to me. The design. So the more I study in this work, and it sounds like you as well, Catherine, the more we go into our study, the more in awe I am of this construct of our bodies. It's incredible.
Donna.
Well, I just had a thought when you were talking about Tai Chi, that Tai Chi's very much about harmony and balance. It's about opening of channels, eliminating blockages so that things flow. This energy flows. But I hadn't really thought about it in relationship to the environment outside your body. So breath is important. And I know from minuscule personal experience that if you get a series of movements to work, in other words, you practice and they flow together, it is almost like you're floating. you're floating in the environment that's outside your body. So I was just wondering about that inner outer connection of the body and the outside of your body that's also seems to be supporting you.
I was very impressed when you were talking about evolution and this question, the Tai Chi, the inner and outer. I find it interesting that in Hawaiian, the Kumulipo, the evolution is of the person, but also of the species and also the place. So you come out of, in the Kumulipo, you begin with darkness, po, and then you move through and it becomes a lightning effect, like light as in illumination, but also light as light becoming in lighter, enlightened, just the becoming lighter. Almost in the German, the word for light, it can also be lifting an anchor. So that sense of going into the light. And in the Kumulipo, there's a constant reciprocal evolution. So I think it was Elizabeth was mentioning that the relation of the land to the ocean. In the Kumulipo, whatever is evolving in the water has a corresponding element on the land. So very different looking structural things, plants and animals, and have various relations between water and animal. So that's a whole different way of looking at evolution, and it's almost poetic in a sense of how you feel change happening.
And for those of you who may not be familiar with that phrase, the Kumulipo, that is the ancient Hawaiian creation chant that Bob is referring to. Starting from darkness of Po and then evolving toward the light, and with these parallel evolutions of different species between the land and the water, right?
And it's creation, but also evolution. So, I mean, at some point, the corresponding things, when certain things were related to other things, even though they don't look like it, they find biologically that they are very closely related, maybe in the structures of the flower or something like that. So the relationships that the ancient Hawaiians saw were very perceptive. But the thing relating the ocean to the land, I haven't seen any other system of evolution that made that kind of corresponding, the earth evolving, that kind of connection.
Renee,
Yes.
I've been doing Qigong for about 45 years now. And for me, it's all about breathing. And fascinating what you said, Bob. My experience is every day I do kind of a 5-10 minute routine. And I start out forcing my breath a little bit because I'm sort of getting it going. But you breathe from your dantian, your na'au in Hawaiian and hara in Japanese. You breathe from there, and then you breathe out your movements. So you're not even moving with your muscles, you're moving with the breath. And as I do it more, as I get to the end of my 10 minutes, my hands, I'm almost just thinking the movement. I just think, oh, arm goes here, and it goes. And I think it's really fascinating. And I all the things that we've been tying in, I've never quite put together, the flow of the water and the fascia and that kind of thing. But that's really the essence, as I learned it, of Qigong. It's, in fact, my teacher used to say, you don't even need to move. The movement's just to kind of keep you busy. You don't fall asleep while you're breathing. So I really like how that ties in the Qigong. And another thing that when David was talking about fascia, somebody got me to buy this some years ago. It's called a fasciinator. Have you ever seen this, Marla? It's made by a guy here in Hawaii.
I haven't seen that specific one. Is it a roller?
It's a roller, yeah. It's called Fascinator, and it's yeah, like I said, the inventor's here, and he does classes. And what do you think of that? Is that kind of a good thing? Does that do you like that?
It's a very good question. So one of the practices I teach that I've mentioned here today called Eldoa, which was created by a French osteopath named Guy Voyer. Guy Voyer is not a fan of fascial rolling because for him, now I have a lot of clients who love their fascia rolling. It reminds me a bit of orthotics. You know, people love their orthotics, and some people will say you shouldn't wear orthotics. If somebody loves their fascia rolling, I'm not necessarily going to argue with them. I'm not as hardline. But the reason Guy Voyer doesn't like it is because, as David mentioned, our fascia is mainly water. I think it was David who said our fascia is, or Renee, our fascia is mainly water. So if we are not rolling in the direction of the fibers, we can be kind of dehydrating the fascia. So, and it's very difficult to be very specific enough to know the fascial lines and to know that we're rolling in the right direction of the fascia. That being said, if you like to roll on your roller and it makes you feel great, I'm not going to argue with you. You know, there's a chance that you're doing a really great job of it. So, but there, what I do in the methods that I've studied is more along the lines of myofascial stretch, where we're using the whole chain and we actually start to move the whole chain. Now, rolling can be a way to liberate and unstick things, I guess, but nothing to the extreme. So, like I said, I'm not maybe as hardline as Guy Voyer, but I would say not to the extreme, you know. More rolling isn't necessarily better. A little bit of rolling could be good. And I haven't studied melt, so I think melt has, yeah, they have some rollers too. But if the system is specific enough, I think it can be very good.
But the differences in melt, how they would respond to that in melt, is that you have to have a softer roller, that the hard rollers activate the nervous system and the nervous system responds, and that actually activates more stuck stress in the body. So that isn't the direction we want to go, right? More stuck stress. So that's why this was invented really soft to mimic manual therapist's hands. So we work in the direction of the fascial lines to get the flow, the water flowing in places where there might be chronic stuck stress and dehydration. But it's soft when it bends. So it's different. I mean, I danced for years and I used a tennis ball and I used a golf ball and I used a really hard foam roller, but I think it was counterproductive for me. I called it ironing my muscles. But this, I'm really hydrating and releasing stuck stress. So that's the difference as far as I see it in my study of melt and the fascia.
Thank you.
So,
Can I ask one other question?
I'm going to step in just for a sec, if I may. And what I kind of hope to do, and maybe this is along your lines, Roger, in our last 2 minutes, is just go back to this question of what does it actually mean to be standing upright vis-a-vis what does it mean to be truly human, which is our theme for the whole year.
I wasn't going to get that esoteric, Renee. I just had this belief over many years from having read a book about posture and how critical it is to your good health. And so I wanted to know what you thought, because you started saying, oh, well, maybe we don't have to pull the string up from here kind of thing. But I continually, as I get older, I work really hard on myself to try to have that upright posture, because I believe that's critical to my good health. And I wondered what you all thought about that.
Well, I would agree with you, Roger, and I also agree with Catherine in that it's not a prescription. However, as you saw maybe in the image from the email from Renee, there is this idea that sometimes over time, as our posture begins to collapse and we start to get some forward head posture, for example.
Yes.
we start to create more tension in our body. And so to keep ourselves upright, allowing your spinal cord, allowing access to your lungs and your diaphragm, allowing a nice flow, through your neck without impingement. I think it is important. I think it's really important, and that we do what we can. Sometimes we have to prioritize, what's going to be the most important thing to impact someone's health. And some idea of, a perfect idea, it's not a prescription. It's not something we can say your head should be here, this should be there, this should be there. It's a little bit unique for each person. However, you know yourself best. Roger, you've been living in your own body. So if you feel something slipping, such as a forward head posture, or like we call it a kyphosis, that upper back hump starts to progress, I believe our tissue is malleable. So I believe that with the right approach, and usually a gentle approach, and I was a dancer too, Catherine, so we did crazy things with tennis balls and golf balls and lacrosse balls, but with some, a gentle approach over, diligent, every day, a little bit, we start to make the trend go in another direction within the harmony of our body. A lot of the practices here, specifically Eldoa, is directly focusing on that, but keeping ourselves moving is also a really big part of it. Motion is lotion. I've heard a physiotherapist say, keeping yourself moving is one of the best things you can do. Within that, you choose your flavor. There are some things like Eldoa practice specifically targets the alignment of the spine. So sometimes we want that targeted approach. Other times it's like, I just need to get back to my dance class, and then I start to feel more upright. It's each person gets to find it in their own way. I don't want to say there's one way to do it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I guess I would like to say that as someone who is deeply rooted in this idea of evolution from a spiritual perspective, that when I look at what it is that we as human beings are able to do from our upright posture, I'm in a state of amazement. When I was down on all fours at the beginning of this session with Marla, and like as if I were a lion, I began to realize that down in that position, I wouldn't have been in the body type to create something like Notre Dame Cathedral. I would not have been in a body type that would have been able to do an amazing ballet to Tchaikovsky. Not that I have done that in this lifetime or the other one either, but there are just some things that we do as human beings that are made possible by the fact that we are in this upright position. We have our hands and arms free and available to use for all of these creative endeavors. And we have this, grander scope of vision from getting really the highest perspective that we have vis-a-vis the length of our body and legs, that I think make this standing position really of great advantage to us from what we have to be able to do and create in this world. And I'd like us all to just give Marla just a little round of thank you. That was really a marvelous presentation that brought out so many great comments and questions from everyone. Thank you all so much.